Good morning, everyone. Thank you again for taking time to pause as we do every first Wednesday in community. I tell you what, I hope that you all feel that this place gives you some fuel that you might need for your soul and for your work. Genuinely, it does that for me, and I just always appreciate knowing that we've got such amazing colleagues out there, and this is a good re-energizing time for yourself every month too. So thanks for being with us for this journey. So as you know, this is our Community Circles and Conversations hour of the month. We really have these to ensure that we're just building some trusting relationships and sharing knowledge and resources with one another. So the whole concept of these is to give time not just to hear and to learn, but also just to talk and connect. So we will plan to do that today. A couple of things that certainly I mentioned before, please feel free to keep your videos on if you would like. And we're also going to be having the first half of our morning, we're going to have a great conversation and discussion with Jamie. And then for the second half, we'll break into smaller groups and would invite you to stay for discussion in those smaller group sessions if you would like. And then we will end by 9:30 so you can be on your way for whatever your day holds. So we're just going to dive right in this morning. I'm just so pleased and excited to hear from Jamie Haberall, who's the Executive Director of the Iowa Health State Initiative. I do think some of you have had an opportunity to...
what book? The badges?
I'm trying to see here. Sorry about that. I think many of you have an opportunity to meet me, but really looking forward to having her share not just some information and resources that they have with Iowa Healthiest State Initiative, but also as an executive director going through this time and both in the past 14 months, but also as we look ahead, just hearing from her some strategies that she's seen, that she's used, and also some ideas that we might have for our teams and for ourselves as we kind of lean in and continue to advance and hopefully avoid some of that burnout or balance beyond burnout, as Jamie and I were talking a little bit before. So with that, I'm just going to ask Jamie to go ahead and she can jump on in here and begin by sharing her screen. She's got some slides for us. But Jamie, thanks for taking time to join us this morning, and we're excited to have a conversation.
Well, thanks, Angie, for inviting me. And it's great to see so many familiar faces that I know and have worked with over the years. So I really just do want to make this about a conversation. First of all, I just want to say thank you to all of you for the great work that you have done over the last 14 months. Working through a pandemic and being a nonprofit organization, whether you provide direct services or not direct services even, it has been a challenging year for each and every one of us, and probably on a personal level as well as a professional level. So I think, first of all, we have to kind of step back and give ourselves the grace to pat ourselves on the back that we've made it this far and that we've survived to June of 2021. When you think about where we were a year ago, and maybe some of the, things that were going through your own mind. I'll share with you some of the, challenges that I was thinking about when the pandemic first hit was really, how do I ensure that I can continue to do the work that we're doing, but also how can I make sure that we had our staff, that they felt like their job was protected and that they would continue to be able to care for their own family as we entered the uncertainty. And so there was a lot of anxiety, I think, that many of us were feeling, not knowing in the nonprofit sector, the type of impact we were going to have. And so being able to pivot and being able to be, flexible, I think is really critical. But with many disasters, and my background is actually, I did disaster work for 15 years prior to entering the Healthy Estate position, and every disaster has mental health challenges. But typically those disasters are really focused on a specific geographical area, and it's not the entire population that's being impacted. And so, and disasters typically don't last 14 months when you're in the active actual response phase either. And so, this type of pandemic has really tested us all in many different ways. And all of us have a different story when it comes to, dealing with the specific situation, the impacts and the uncertainties, both professionally and personally. So first of all, I just want you all to take a moment to say, thank goodness we've survived to this point. We have a long ways to go still, obviously, and I'm sure there are still many challenges that your organizations are dealing with, but just recognize what you have been able to accomplish over the last 14 months and what you've been able to do for your team. I think it's also important as executive directors and leaders within your organization that you do take time to care for yourself. I think it's easy for all of us. We don't do nonprofit work just because. We do it because we're tied to the mission and the work that we really are trying to accomplish. And so it's easy for a lot of us to step aside and not think about ourselves first, but it's really important if we're going to be able to truly do the work that, we're set forth, whether it's our mission-driven work or caring for your own family, that you really have to stop and identify where you can what habits or what priorities do you need to make first to ensure that you can actually be healthy as you move through very stressful situations like we have a pandemic. So just want to always start off saying kudos to our amazing nonprofit partners that I think often do not get the recognition for the great work that you're doing to really help lift up our community. So just starting with that, I think it's really important. I think from, some of the work that we've been doing over the last year has really, I think, recognized the pandemic has brought to light the importance of mental health. And I think all of you have probably seen different, the continuum of mental health has been on a roller coaster the last 14 months for all of us. But I think it's recognized that importance that each and every one of us has mental health. And so prior to the pandemic, the Healthiest State had launched a campaign called Make It Okay. And I'm just going to share some slides. I want to talk about some resources that are available that are free, no cost, that you can use within your own workplace to start having conversations if you don't know where to start, or maybe you already have conversations very openly about mental health. These are additional tools and resources that you can use as well. So I just want to make sure that you're aware of these tools and resources. And then I would love to hear more from all of you about, what have you been doing for the last year to really, address your own personal mental health, but then really the team members that you work with as well, or maybe even the clients that you're working with. What are, innovative or creative strategies that you have identified that has worked to ensure that you're addressing, the mental health of the team that surrounds you as well. So Make It Okay is a community campaign that is really focused on reducing stigma by increasing understanding and creating caring conversations about mental illness. So this campaign was actually launched in Minnesota in 2012 and was gifted to the Healthiest State. So we launched it in 2019. There's a lot of different components of Make It Okay, and I'm just going to give you kind of the highlights of the different aspects that are available to each and every one of you as organizations. So first of all, there is a component that includes having presentations. So I often share that this is kind of that entry point before maybe someone would even want to take mental health first aid training or QPR training. There's a lot of very in-depth mental health training opportunities that are great and amazing. But this training is really kind of focused around, I always say, talking to my parents that live in rural Iowa. So maybe they haven't dealt directly with mental health in the past, but how do we get the 4 out of 5 Iowans that do not experience mental illness to actually be able to talk openly and have caring conversations with the 1 out of 5 that do have a mental illness? And so a big component of Make It Okay is a presentation that really starts to open those conversations and start to understand what does stigma look like and how can you personally start to, change some of your own internal thoughts and behaviors when it comes to interacting or working with someone that has a mental illness. So that's around requesting a speaker. You can do that through our website, and I'm happy to customize and work with you. We also have a number of other partners across the state who also speak on behalf of our organization. They've been trained to do the Make It Okay presentation. And this presentation can be done, Typically, I try not to do it any shorter than 20 minutes because I think you lose value of some of the key opportunities to have conversation, but anywhere from 20 to 60 minutes. And it includes interactive discussion that can be done via Zoom. We transitioned everything last year to offering it via Zoom, as well as getting back into the in-person. So having those dialogues and conversations in small groups really helps individuals kind of start to understand, their own personal biases or stigmas when it comes to talking about mental illness. So that's one opportunity. The other opportunity is becoming a Make It Okay ambassador. And this is a free training that we offer. It's a 2-hour online training that we offer via Zoom. And it is for anyone who's just interested in helping reduce the stigma around mental illness. You do not have to be a mental health professional or expert by any means. It's really just that you have the passion and you really want to help start those conversations. Becoming an ambassador, you receive access to a slew of different resources, including the PowerPoint presentation for Make It Okay. And you can give that to, whatever your network looks like. So it may be you want to, have conversations with your book club or at your church group, or maybe you want to present to your workplace. You would have all of the tools and resources to do that. We have over 800 trained ambassadors across the state of Iowa. And really the goal of the ambassadors, I always say, is that they're kind of the army for the healthiest state to start having those conversations. Even if it's starting at your own kitchen table, we've got to start somewhere, and that can really help with the ripple effect of reducing the stigma as well. So we have trainings posted on our website. Those are available. We offer them at least once a month, tend to offer them more in the fall through kind of the early spring timeframe. Summer tends to, people aren't as excited about doing online trainings, period. So we don't have as many opportunities available in the summertime. So that's another opportunity for yourself, or anyone on your team can become a registered ambassador as well. And then we do send kind of updates to them if there's new tools available or resources that we've launched as well. Then also you can become a registered workplace. Again, there's no cost to doing this. You can sign up on our website to become a registered Make It Okay workplace. And with that, you receive a toolkit that helps support you in taking the Make It Okay content and material and incorporating it within whatever your organizational structure might look like. So for some organization, you might have a wellness committee, and so it might fit appropriately within there. Or at other organizations, maybe you don't have a wellness committee, but you really want to bring awareness to the importance of talking about mental health and mental illness in your organization. So maybe you have a special committee that can launch it. I think the key as leaders is really it has to come from the top down, and we have to lead by example. And so, by what we've seen with some other organizations, they've really stepped forward. They've become a registered Make It Okay workplace, and then they've shared with their entire staff that, we are a registered Make It Okay workplace, and this is what it means to us as an organization. And then you can share additional tools and resources. So we have a couple of different blogs that highlight some of the ways that other organizations have also incorporated it within current infrastructure that they might already have, or even outside of their current infrastructure as well. So the toolkit gives you a whole bunch of different ways that you can do it. And it's not a cookie cutter approach, because each and every one of our organizations is different. And so we really tried to make it nimble and flexible based on, you might have an employer that has 5,000 employees, and then you might have a place like Healthy Estate, we have 4 employees. But trying to give people ideas and tips on how they could incorporate it within their organization as well. And then we have a number of assets available. Again, all of these are free. There are no, we don't charge for these. These are assets that really are, again, helping us spread the word about mental illness in our state and why it's important to reduce that stigma. So we have everything from a 15 and 30-second kind of PSA commercial, some of you may have seen. We have digital ads, we have print ads, we have a number of social media graphics. During May's Mental Health Awareness Month, we put out an entire toolkit that, again, plug and play, beg, borrow, and steal everything that's created, because that's really the intent of why we put those materials together, is so that it's not something that you have to think about and identify a graphic designer to create it, those type of things, that you can literally beg, borrow, and steal any of the content that we've created. And then we have a ton of educational materials and assets that really, again, can be incorporated as you see it within your own organization. Everything from obviously the presentation to brochures to bookmarks to we have a online as well as a printed pledge card, newsletter templates, blogs. We have a number of stories, both written as well as in video, of individual Iowans who shared their own personal journey with living with a mental illness. And so those are very impactful and powerful because those people have really taken the time to share their own personal stories as well. And I think it helps just educate all of us and better understanding what it's like to live with the mental illness. And then we also launched in May our podcast. And so there's 7 individual stories along with a healthcare provider who is talking about different how the different diagnoses that individual may have shared as well. So lots of tools and resources, again, that you can beg, borrow, steal. You can add, you can co-brand them as well as. So, we're very open to how we can help you get the message out to your audiences as well. And then I just shared my contact information and really kind of want to open it up before we jump into breakouts quickly, just to see if people have any creative ways that you've been addressing it, whether it's your personal mental health or your team's mental health throughout the last 14 months. I would love to get any ideas that you guys might have that maybe I can steal and use for our own small team.
Hi, Jamie. It's Trey.
Hey, Trey.
Long time no see.
Yeah.
One of the things I've gotten more into over the past year that I honestly never thought I would, but I've seen hesitancy to try to. It's really helped me, but I've seen hesitancy when I push things out. I think people, they don't have a problem with it. They just don't pay much attention to it, but it's around mindfulness, meditation, trying to use some of those practices, 10% happier app, some of those type of approaches. And I don't know if you have some of those resources on your website. I jotted down all of what you just shared, but trying to get some of those resources out to my team, our leadership team, just to see if that could make a difference for them. Although again, it took me, I'm 48 and just started doing it for the first time. So I don't know if that would be something that worked for others, but it's worked for me over the past year.
Yeah, that's a great one. And I think, there's so much research around mindfulness and meditation, and you continue to read more and more, especially of how people have used it to survive through the pandemic, right? I think it's so foreign to a lot of Iowans still. But I can share some additional resources that we have around that. One of the things even to think about when you're starting meetings is that an opportunity just to pause? Because I think for many of us, we're running Zoom meeting to Zoom meeting, right? Or we're still in-person to in-person meeting. And we don't really take that time to just take a couple of minutes to take deep breaths even. And so is that even just a kind of a new habit that you can start incorporating into meetings? Is just okay, let's all just take a deep breath because we haven't probably done it all morning or all day, depending on where you're at in your day, just to kind of balance, kind of reset yourself, because that's something I think we all don't value as much as we should, by just taking big, deep breaths, how much it can actually help, reset your physical as well as your mental, state at that time. That's
one of the things too that I was just thinking as you mentioned the deep breathing at the beginning, or just taking that in. We've started, especially with our leadership team meetings and our strategy team meetings, just opening up for asking the question, does anyone have any clearing? Just so that we can have a sense of, if something's really weighing on a colleague, if there's something happening at home, if there's some, because everyone comes into those conversations, even if they're on Zoom, sometimes with something that's just in their mind that they can't quite manage, and having us know about that is really helpful. So sometimes there's not clearing, but boy, I have found it personally really helpful, just so that people understand what I'm bringing into the discussion, and it's kind of a safe way to invite it. Jamie, I might have interrupted you. I'm sorry. That's my clearing. I might have interrupted you.
That's okay. Other, I guess, ways or things that you've seen, that I know many of you work in frontline, and you have a lot of probably staff members who have had to overcome a lot in the last year, dealing directly with direct patient care even. I know, Trey, just knowing the work that you do at every step, are you seeing, that kind of potential burnout happening in some of your team members? And are you looking at how do we address this? Because I think that's going to be one of, yes, mental health has been brought to the forefront, but I think it's important that we don't lose sight that it's not just going to go away when we check the box that the pandemic is over, that this is going to have long lasting impacts. And so as we start to transition back into, whether you've been remote, like our office has been remote since March of 2020. And as we start to look at going back into the office, just thinking about how do we make sure that mental health is top of mind for all of us.
Yeah, absolutely. We're seeing, yeah. I mean, I actually jotted down for our small groups and happy to share. I mean, some of the things I was hoping to hear about today and glean from everybody is, there seems to be a push pull between burnout. And yet when we try to provide things to combat it, it's almost like it not only does it not help, it can exacerbate it. When you try to pull a team together, it's like, okay, now you've just taken me out of the field for 2 hours. We push out our EAP stuff, and I think we have a good EAP provider, and it just is almost unused. And so every year we're saying, what are we paying for here when only 3 people accessed it out of 400, low involvement of any kind of internal efforts with lunch and learns or anything around mental health. And so, I am all ears because we are seeing huge amount of burnout, especially with our nursing staff who have to work on a more 24-hour take call cycle. And yet we're just not having a ton of success as till now on how to give them the support mechanisms to navigate through it.
Trey, this is Sherry. I would agree with you. We're seeing the same thing. I think a couple things that are adding to it is because the workforce issues, we are so short-staffed. It's harder now than ever to fill our positions.
Yes.
The members we have are working more hours. And the thing that I often am just reminded of as I speak to our staff, it's not that they're worried that they're going to get COVID. It's not even that they're extra hours. What's really weighing so heavily on them is they can't fix the issues, and the issues are so significant for those that we serve. So, I mean, I know this sounds ridiculous, but really trying to make sure that we are having face-to-face meetings, because even, obviously safely, but you can tell a lot by someone's posture and how they're engaging. And I've really just been trying to say to people, you're doing the best that you can. This is difficult. This is hard. You have to know you've done the best you can, and asking too, what else can I do for you? How can I support you? Because same with you, we've tried to, I mean, this is going to sound silly, but we're even doing, we have a wellness team, and we're doing a 12:15 walk around Camp Sunnyside. It's 15 minutes. It's outside. Our teams have been going around and actually snatching people from their workspace to say, hey, just come with us for a few minutes. But even that, they're like, I just don't have time. I've got this going on. So I think it's a real issue, and trying to have that balance without having people feel obligated to do one more thing. And in our field, we have people that are caring people and perfectionists that want to do the right thing and a good job for other people.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I would agree with you. Sorry.
Aubrey, we can hear you.
Sorry, I'm actually trying to help my own mental wellness and walking while I'm doing this meeting outside the Des Moines Public Schools Operations Center. I would say, something I've been thinking about is trying to sneak like accidental relaxation in with, some things that I've enjoyed to just help my brain, because I couldn't read very well. My anxiety was too high to enjoy some of the things I usually did to relax. So paint by number has been one, and our like macrame. So trying to find more like crafty things that we can just sit together online and color, and not necessarily work. The other part, we did some work with Christine Herr with Art Force Iowa, and she had a great suggestion for starting all of our meetings with high-low, which was just a way to kind of give everyone an update of like what's going really well, how can we support each other and kind of cheer each other on, and then where are we struggling. And it's been a great way for, especially because we experienced almost 100% turnover, for everybody to get to know each other and feel like we can support each other better.
That concept, Aubrey, reminds me a little bit of what, and Nicole, I would certainly invite you to lean in, but something that I heard when Nicole was at Orchard Place, she shared with me what they were doing, a sanctuary model, and I've used the strategy at home with my own family. But Nicole, do you want to talk maybe a little bit about how you would start those meetings and invite support?
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing, Angie, and trying to translate that out for people. So it's a pretty simple piece. It's called a community meeting. And you start by asking everybody in the room, how are you feeling today? What is your goal and who can help you? And the goal and who can help you don't necessarily have to be connected to work. But the idea is when people are in high trauma or high stress, that they often become hopeless and they think, oh my God, nobody can help me. I'm here all by myself. I'm in it alone. And so I think it's really that connecting point for people. And I think especially during COVID, when many people, not everybody, right? A lot of our direct providers were still in office, so to speak. But when people were isolated and more at home, they really began, I experienced people having more feelings of hopeless or helplessness, that I'm here by myself, I'm here all day, I have no connection. So I think this getting back to, some in-person meetings and more physical connections with people really does make a difference. And just, I think pausing, and this is part of what that community meeting does, is pausing to recognize that the work is hard, that we all engage in. But it doesn't mean that we shouldn't do things to recognize that and pause and take care of ourselves for a few minutes and just let that go. I think to Sherry's point, it's really difficult to fill positions, especially in direct care, and recognizing that the people that are choosing to do that and doing that work are working really hard, but then they also have to have that self-awareness to take that downtime and take care of themselves. And as several people have said, I think it's got to be throughout the day and not just at the beginning or end of the day.
So Nicole, here at the Animal Rescue League, I really find that helpful, what you just said, because, I can really relate to what Sherry, and I'm sure everybody else can relate to what Sherry's saying about the lack of staff and the lack of new hires. So we're going to have to get as creative as we got during COVID to keep our programs and doors open. We're going to have to get that creative on how we're going to be inventive about how we get the work done with fewer people. So yeah, I thank you for Sherry, and thank you for you, Nicole, because I'm going to take that back and use what you said.
I'll say too, Tom, I mean, I know someone else in the chat mentioned they have something similar at their own family dining table. But the thing that I also love about that sort of question at the beginning of the how are you feeling today, we have a rule that you can't say good because and this has been great for our kids, but I think it's also been really helpful for me to be able to name the actual feeling that I'm having, and whether it's elated or whether it's feeling destroyed or defeated or motivated or inspired. And it helps me just kind of know how to lean in and support my kids and my husband. But I think it's also been really helpful in just recognizing where other people are. And we run into fine and good a heck of a lot, that's been really, really helpful.
I think the other piece I'd add, Angie, is something that Trey said is, I think sometimes as leaders, we try to give people tools around self-care, and they almost push back on it, saying that's just one more thing I have to do. And, my experience was that sometimes people want you to do that for them, and self-care is a very individualized thing. When I was at Orchard Place, we actually had people write plans like what works for me, right? What do I need to do to manage and take care of myself? And then you've got to figure that out on your own. For me, I walk every morning. And so that's just something that I need to do for myself, but that doesn't work for everybody. And my employer can't do it for me. My employer can encourage me and ask me, hey, am I doing it? But I can't necessarily carve out that time and do it for you. And so I think it's a balance of, yes, you need to have breaks during the day. And I love Sherry's idea of, walking around the campus, but that can't be the only thing you do all day to manage for yourself. So I think it's really encouraging and challenging people to find what works for them and then make time for that in their own day, wherever that may be.
Hey, sorry, this is Tony. Quick question. One of the things I've noticed is through this pandemic is when Jamie was talking about a crisis or a natural disaster, right? There's a very defined an event happened, tornado goes through, community rallies, they rebuild, and there's an end, right? So everybody is kind of on that same timeline and pathway of moving forward. With the last 14 months, this has been a very personal journey for everybody, and people are as far apart as Governor Reynolds and Dr. Ahart, or former President Trump and Dr. Fauci. I mean, just complete opposite ends of the spectrum. And it's hard to build consensus in the cohesive team aspect around when you have some staff that are like, the switch was flipped, COVID's over, we should do everything. And then you have some staff that are like, well, I really don't want to come back to work, but I have no problems traveling, which then creates anxiety and stress for the rest of the staff that are here doing the work and feel like we still need to be diligent with hand washing and mask wearing. And so it's so widespread that I haven't even found the great place to just start and get people to understand that it's different for everybody. And you have to have a little grace and understanding to know that it's just different.
Tony, you bring up, I think that's what's so different about, even the work that I used to do for 15 years, every disaster we dealt with did have there's a very distinct, yes, recovery can take longer, right? Especially after a flood, but there's still like this kind of endpoint. You're not in this heightened state of, response. And we're really not, we don't know what the end state is for a pandemic because we haven't gone through one. And like you said, also we have there's so much divisiveness around the pandemic in and of itself that it makes it even more challenging when you're working with teammates. So I think it's a great point. That's why I'm like, mental health isn't going to go, this conversation of mental health can't just stop once we think this pandemic is over, because all of us have had such personal, challenges and growth that we've had to, and sacrifices we've had to make over the last 14 months. And those aren't going to necessarily end just magically tomorrow and say back to normal, whatever that might be.
I would echo that. I think that was really well said by both of you. We're starting to see stress and conflict between groups of employees of, the vaccinated versus the unvaccinated, and how do we identify, or should we be identifying who is and isn't, and can I wear a sticker that says I am, so it's just another dynamic that causes tension, within the organization.
I do think that constant communication and trying to foster open communication is so important, because we all know that the number one tool in surviving trauma is relationships. And so I almost feel like continuing to try to make it, for lack of a better word, make it okay to talk about that everyone's at a different spot. And in our environments and in our communities, there's room for views. And of course, we're going to be respectful in how we have conversations. I have been at Easter Seals. We've this week, we kind of walked back masking for outside. Up until this point, we'd had masks and face shields on. We've taken face shields off. Now we're allowing vaccinated clients and staff to make the decision if they choose to take their mask off outside. But I have been leading it with, but masks are welcome here as well. And trying to remind people of just being respectful, that not everyone is in the same spot. And I know it sounds almost like rules of kindergarten, but I think as leaders, we've got to continue to model and talk about that being part of the expectation too.
Curious too, I've had some great conversations with some folks, including on this call, about the value of a coach or kind of a support person who can help people think through just where they are themselves. And Amy, I know in the chat you talked about some of your staff and access to those conversations, but any reflection on just how you've gotten there with your team and some of the benefits that you're seeing? Or I would love to hear more about that strategy from you. And then I know if others want to lean into that, I'd love to hear it.
Sure. So Amy Kroll, Community Youth Concepts. For the past 10 years, I've been working with Iowa Department of Public Health And through that work, we've been there. It's twofold. So one, as the ED of CYC, my staff have had access to what's considered a capacity coach. So it's a designation by Iowa Department of Public Health with a very intentional strategy to support their workforce. So they have been willing and been providing for coaching for anyone who receives their funding. So for some of those grants, it's a requirement, but for others, it's an opt-in, and it's been very beneficial for frontline staff to just have that support. And so every issue doesn't become a supervisory issue. It's not something that, oh, great, now I've let my supervisor know that XYZ is going on at home, and I didn't really feel comfortable having to talk to them about that. But it's also, or it could be very performance-based. So, hey, I'm really trying to figure out how I can break through and get over my own anxiety talking to XYZ person in the community that I really need to speak with. But it also doesn't then become an EAP issue. So it helps folks think through, what is it that I'm trying to accomplish? How is the best way to get there? And what is it that I need to overcome in order, or use my strengths differently in order to be able to get to that point? Angie is aware of this, but I've actually had the opportunity then to work with a coach because of that work. So I've been able to work with a coach out of Mississippi for the last 10 years. And it's been just an invaluable resource to be able to think through, even from my perspective, how do I get the best out of an employee? At what point do I really need to step in and have real conversations or a different culture created within our own workplace? So it helps kind of think through. I think of it as a thought partner, someone who's really helps you think through what are your next steps without it having to be, going to your board or having those conversations when your staff isn't necessarily the right people to have those conversations with. And so, as many of you know, I am actually stepping down from Community Youth Concepts, and I have been a coach for Iowa Department of Public Health for the last 10 years, and I am moving into that role in a more thoughtful, strategic sort of way. So just a selfless plug there as well. But I really cannot speak highly enough of the opportunity just to connect with folks outside of the organization that have no vested interest in how you proceed, but really help you think through the best way to proceed. I'm happy to answer any questions too, or if folks want to reach out after, that's fine too.
Amy, as you were putting the context around it, it sounded to me like it was more geared toward leadership positions. Like, how do I manage this? Is it for anyone? I mean, is it, a frontline staff member could reach out and?
Yeah, so it actually started out as frontline staff. So it started out with a grant that was a very isolated, siloed position within agencies and was very different. The supervisors really couldn't, it just didn't fit the current schema. And so that's where it started, and it's definitely evolved. Most of my work actually now for the department is really around upper management. How do you go through change? It's change management, essentially. There's different coaches within our structure that have different skill sets. And so, who they match up with depends, but it's everyone from frontline staff all the way up to, I'm working with directors at this point as well.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
This is Mita. I'm going to jump in here. I work as a success coach in the Des Moines area, and I just want to reiterate what was said. Most of my clients are doing one of two things. They're looking for that safe, trusted space where it isn't real because they've said it to me and not to a staff person. They didn't trigger an unintended cascade of activity. It's a space to really sort through what they're doing. The other thing I work with every one of my clients on is their well-being. So everybody creates a strategy around what do you need to be your best self while we work on some of these other goals. And I have clients actually have an 11-year-old child as a client whose parents are really interested in her finding some structure, clear up to executive directors and entrepreneurs. But the value of working with a coach, clearly it's a plug because I believe in it. That's what I do for a living. But it really gives you that space to be authentic, to trust, and to try. And if you've never worked with a coach, reach out and ask somebody. It can be a huge life partner.
Thanks for sharing that. Oh, Amy, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, if you're looking for a coach as well, there is the International Coach Federation and their standards of core competencies. They have a list of coaches. It's definitely a place to start. And there are several coaches within the metro area as well. Nita, do you have other suggestions of where else to look?
I was going to say, Iowa has an actual ICF chapter.
Yeah.
And so it lists the people within the state as well as the national one. There's also an organization called NUMI, NOOMII, that does international multiple languages and things if you have needs like that. And from a corporate standpoint, there's a couple places like Everbright and BetterUp where you can contract as an organization and make it a more broader institutional versus a one-on-one transaction.
Thanks for sharing those ideas. You think about, I just love all this stuff in the chat too. We'll distill it down into some bullet points for you. I don't know if Garrett's still on. I'm catching, Garrett, what you were talking about in terms of doing the breathing, just teaching the breathing. I've talked with a couple of executive directors and they've adopted a similar process over the past year, and they have found it incredibly grounding. I just didn't know if there's anything else, Garrett, from your perspective you'd like to add, or how you even got to that place to teach it with your team.
Well, part of our whole program is we do yoga and mindfulness, and we do it at the Wellmark YMCA. And what we found was it's not just our clients or our team who benefits from even taking a couple moments. The executive director of the Y or the Y staff will come in on those days and actually just take a few moments, even if it's 10 minutes. And sometimes they don't even do the yoga. They just sit there and practice that breathing that we try that day. And there's hundreds of different styles, like we were saying, but there's certain styles for certain feelings. Like there's certain styles that you need to do if you're angry or you're having a lot of anxiety or you're having another meeting and you're having to show, because we do 4 or 5 of these Zooms every day. It's just getting ready to do that. There's so many different things that you can just take a moment for yourself and figure out what's going on within.
Yeah, I'm chuckling, Garrett. I'm thinking, yeah, probably at least 5 Zoom meetings a day. I don't know about you, but I had to invest in multiple pairs of blue light glasses just to manage all the Zooms. But yeah, thanks for that. That's a good reminder too. I think what a gift for that staff and leadership of the Y to be able to walk down and have that space, as part of the building. But that is something that I think is really transferable no matter where you're at, or if you're in your car before you walk in somewhere. I love that. So, as we've got about 15 minutes left, and one thing that I would love to just see if anyone else has any more reflections on, Tony kind of talked a little bit about this sort of stress and conflict that's happening within teams as we, for some of us as we come back in, or for folks as things reopen differently. And I would just love to know if anyone has thoughts on how we could help our staff teams and or help the community with that, whether it's vaccinated, unvaccinated, or workplace, not workplace, or just some of these tensions. Are there ways that you're maybe helping to manage that uncertainty at all?
This is Amy. I would say for our staff, even from the get-go, it's just creating that culture of that safe culture, and that mean, we discuss things. We discuss, what do you guys think about masks? How do you, we benefit because we have a small team, but we're able to have those conversations in a real open sort of manner. And I mean, that's a climate that we've created over time. So it certainly didn't start with the hard issues, but started with the small ones of, what do you guys want to have for lunch if we order in, so we start there and then build from there to create that type of environment.
I sit on the Des Moines Partnership Inclusion Council, and they've started doing something that I think is really cool. And they invite a member to just share their worldview. And it is an opportunity for that person to share a little bit about who they are, what their perspectives are, and how they got there. And I have found it just to be very interesting because you learn about where people are coming from and how their perspective was shaped. And I think when you can understand how someone, even if you don't agree with someone's view on something, if you can understand how they got there and what they bring to the table, it just makes you more tolerant as a person, in my opinion.
I would say we've had, because we're in a shared office space, we have the, I guess, opportunity to, us as leaders, and I actually missed the meeting where all of us got together because I was taking vacation. But, that's been helpful too, is, for at least for our team, it's not just our team that we're impacting. There are 7 or 8 other organizations here. So our choices impact other people as well. And, I think that's been, for, I guess, me and, my hope and approach is that we are, because we're not direct service. So we can err on the side of caution. And I would rather have us, just ease into this whole kind of coming back. I'll be honest, I don't even want us to be in the office right now because we don't need to be. Do I personally want to be in the office? Yes. But did I want to have our team all come back to the office starting, in June? No, but we did mostly because we're having challenges with onboarding new team members and having people, get into it and get going. So it feels like being stuck between a rock and a hard place because, balancing how we want to, treat each other and, treat our community members while also trying to make sure that we are moving forward and not, falling backwards.
I'm struck by something, Sherry, that you said earlier this morning about relationships being the #1 tool to survive trauma. And, in listening to everything, I just keep thinking about how that's playing out right now in so many ways. And I do, I'm a people person. I would just, if I saw any of you in person, I'm hugging you. I mean, that's just, I love the people, but I'm also just struck by, in times of trauma, especially for those of us in the sector, we're focusing so much on supporting others and giving so much, and the frontline staff that you all work with and all of those things. And then we kind of lose that relationship with ourselves and taking care of ourselves. And I don't know, I'm just struck by what you said, Sherry, and all the advice. And I'm thinking we've neglected relationships in different ways, and starting with ourselves, many of us, and how we kind of bring that all back together again is really interesting.
I think it's important to talk about the why. I mean, from very early on, we said we were going to follow Iowa Department of Public Health and CDC. And it's been even interesting at times to see, whether you're a mask or not a mask, a vaccine or not a vaccine, how at times that's pissed both groups off with the decisions we've had to make. But we've never wavered from, this is who we're going to follow, for better or worse. This is what we're going to build our expectations around within the workplace. And that's why we've changed if you have to wear a mask. That's why we've changed, if you can be in the office. or that you can't be in the office, and just trying to hammer that to death, that, you know, we're not making these decisions without some kind of expertise guiding us.
So as we think about moving forward and continuing the pause, the monthly pause for community circles and conversations, you know, would just love you to feel free to email me, or you can drop ideas in the chat. Want to just continue to help support all of you, whether it's just more conversations and chance to share ideas. If there's something you heard today that you would love us to explore, you know, building out or carrying it out to more of you, you know, I hope that you all feel as though you can share some ideas with us. I think as many of you know, we are going to be adding a team member hopefully soon to the community impact team with the foundation. And, you know, the focus of that particular role is really going to be on deepening and widening the support to the sector. And that is what you all need. So, you know, I'm intrigued by additional conversations, perhaps around coaching models and support for all of you. Would love to brainstorm, but, you know, whatever it is, big or small, please share ideas. Happy to do that, and also happy to connect anyone if you're looking for some resources. Boy, all of these things in the chat, I'm like, this is awesome. I just so appreciate the knowledge and resources you all bring. Any closing thoughts that you all have? Otherwise, maybe we can have some popcorn style responses about, you know, what are you going to take away as an approach to mindfulness or wellness for yourself? What's sort of a commitment that that you want to make or share, or challenge each other for today?
I have a quick share that I would, be remiss if I didn't. We actually got all of the Des Moines Public Schools plant starts donated here today. So if any of you are looking at starting gardening for your mental health or wellness or for your team, all these little babies need to find a home today. So reach out to me and I'd be happy to deliver some as I'm out delivering boxes. So that's my little plug.
That's awesome. All right, any nonprofits, if you need some I don't know what they are, but they look great, and somebody should make sure they stay alive, because I wouldn't be the one. I'm terrible at that. I just have to say. Let Aubrey know. So what might you do to lean into wellness and well-being for yourself and your team moving forward?
I don't know who said, but somebody said something about making sure that we're modeling. And I know what I need to do. Every single day I know what I need to do, but I don't always do it. So I'm gonna refocus on, if I'm not taking care of myself, how can I take care of our team and model what needs to happen?
I set a calendar reminder on my phone for every hour. So I take just a couple minutes to get up and breathe. I use an essential oil, something, but that phone reminder to do it helps keep me on track.
That's great. I'm going to look into Garrett's breathing again. I know the breathing numbers, but I just need to do it. So Garrett, I need some breathing help.
Along with the gardening, if anyone enjoys weeding or uses that as a stress management technique, there's plenty of weeds always at CYC in our pollinator garden that you are welcome to come and snag.
That is good humor. That is also a really good way to practice wellness. I see Tony came back on. Tony, did you have a great idea here? Well, I'm sure you do.
No, because pulling weeds reminds me of my childhood when I had to do it in the family garden, and it's just like I hate pulling weeds. I'd rather just spray the whole thing with like Roundup and call it a day.
If Tony comes to your organization's garden, just, you know, show him something else to do.
I was just gonna say, Tony, you are disinvited.
That's awesome. Well, again, thanks everyone for spending time this morning. Jamie, thank you for giving us the tee up to this conversation, and really appreciate all of the tools and resources that are available to everyone, and appreciate what you do to help make sure that the conversation is also in the nonprofit space. So really appreciate your leadership. Thanks so much. Enjoy the day, everyone. Get outside, have some sun, and we'll see you all soon. Happy summer.